Aloha, namaste. This is Alexis Cox with Radha Home Yoga, and I'm here to bring us our total solar eclipse forecast for this coming Saturday and Sunday. Here in California, it's going to be 11:41 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So it's going to be technically on Saturday, but really more like Sunday morning. And of course, this is a solar eclipse where the new moon is, the sun and the moon coming together. And the sun is being eclipsed. And of course, at 11:41 p.m., we probably won't be seeing the sun being eclipsed. So it's going to be visible to those across the world in Asia, India, Africa. They'll at least be able to see part of the eclipse. And the range of the eclipse is actually going to be in the evening from about 8:45 p.m. again Pacific Standard Time Saturday into the morning on Sunday 2:34 p.m. Sunday. So except for places like California and Hawaii, it's gonna really be all happening on Sunday. So this eclipse is the one in the middle of this series. We have two penumbral eclipses, two partial eclipses that are lunar. We had one 2 weeks ago, and we'll have another one in 2 weeks on July 5th. And this is the one in the middle, and it's a full-on eclipse. We have the north node of the moon eclipsing the sun with a 2 degrees differential, so they're right on top of each other. And what we see is that it's our power being eclipsed, right? Because it's the sun. It's not the moon. It's not our emotions. It's not that energy that we experienced last time, like a couple weeks ago. This is very different. And this is really where a lot of the focus has been over the last year and change that we've been in this nodal axis cycle of Gemini Sagittarius. The focus really has been on the Gemini end, on the Rahu North Node end. And the reason is because it is it's more output. It's what we experience more of. And it's what we see manifesting all around us. The part where Ketu is, the southern node, is hidden and it's more discreet, and it's also something that's kind of imploding into us. It's something that we're experiencing underneath the surface. We're not necessarily as aware of it. And hopefully these next couple eclipses are going to change that, because if we don't change what's happening on the south end, the north end continues to have this sort of delusional magnified presence of, well, in this case, untruth. Basically, we've been in a communication situation where the output of information in our world has become grossly false. We have a new normal of just anything goes. I mean, the news, the alternative media, the mainstream media, your friends, your family, Facebook posts. I mean, part of it is fueled by social media. Probably a large part of it is fueled by social media, because anyone can kind of be an author now. Anyone can be a journalist. Anyone can be a reporter. And everyone checking each other has its benefits, right? We don't just have the one media that tells us what we're supposed to know. We have alternative sources, and that's powerful and important. But at this point in time, almost all sources are coming from such a strong confirmation bias. It's almost impossible to get just straight up news anymore. And our friends and family and our colleagues and different people, everybody's coming from the same perspective. Deep-seated beliefs that we have refused to look at, mostly because we don't even really know they're there. We don't even really understand our own belief systems. We think that we are the masters of our beliefs. But whatever your views are, you don't really own them. You were given them. Now, if you're one of those people who went out and found yoga, or went out and found Buddhism, and went out and found your own path, and you really believe at this point, like, I found my own way, my beliefs are my own, they're not my parents, they're not the ones that were given to me, you're almost farther from the truth in some ways than the people who are still living in the same paradigm they were raised in. And the reason is because you have created distance between what was instilled in you, what you were born into, and what you now believe. So it's even harder for you to see that link, because it's like, well, I'm not like that. I don't believe that. I'm not. I mean, how many times in the past few weeks have we heard people just completely spiritually bypass the entire Black Lives Matter movement? It's common, and it's actually the more enlightened folks who often have this perspective, and it's because their deep-seated belief systems are disowned. They're actually disowned. They don't realize those systems anymore because they have something new. And of course, I'm thinking about it from a Western perspective, right? I was born in the United States of America. I went out and found yoga. I found Ayurveda. I found Vedic astrology. And that's kind of the perspective I'm coming from. But there are plenty of people in this country who come from Latin America, or they come from India, or they come from different countries, and they came to America. And that also tends to be a situation where there's a lot of disowning of your roots and your past, even if you don't get that, even if you don't see that, because no nation here on earth at this moment in 2020 does not have a history of incredible crimes against humanity in the name of race and religion. There is no nation. You don't come from that nation. I don't care if you were born in this time and this time. I mean, I'm born, I was raised in the 80s in Los Angeles with a single mom. I had tons of friends of all different cultures. I'm not racist. I don't have any problems like this. And it's easy to see a black and white picture, to go to somewhere like the South and see how segregated things are, and to really be like, oh, well, that's a problem. Those people have problems. Those people are racist. And to not see how it could possibly be me or my people that are like that. But the problem with these beliefs are they're very hard to recognize. We don't know they're there. And because we don't know they're there, because we have disowned them, and we now believe we're over here and we don't see where we originated from, it's harder to clear them out. It's harder to fix them. And actually at this point, as I talked about last time, the nakshatra, the star that Ketu is in, is called Mula. And this is where we actually uproot. It's kind of like, we can't fix this. There's no little like Band-Aid we can do. We need to just pull it out by the roots and throw it away and start new. And that is really what we see with things like defund the police and these kind of big statements that sound like, whoa, that sounds like a big thing that we're gonna do. I think the main sentiment behind it is that we're understanding that things are built on such a faulty system to begin with that we need to completely change it. And it's not unique, it's not just the police. It's like the healthcare system, our education system. We have a lot of problems in this country. And they're founded upon these bases, these premises that are all the same. They all have the same root. And again, the more disowned you are from your belief systems, from your childhood that you had instilled in you, and I don't just mean your parents, I don't just mean your community or your neighborhood or your church or your whatever, I mean us as a society had beliefs instilled in us. If you went to school, if you read the books that were given to you, if you were taught history, every single thing that we have been given in this society, and all of us were raised in it. It's different if you were raised in a different country, for sure. What your beliefs are that are instilled in you are going to be different. But even if you're from a different country, we all as a world really share this collective history. And I talked about it again last time, like this colonialism, this imperialism is the foundation of our world and all the systems we now encounter. And everything we've done to try to repair that has been like a Band-Aid, a fix, a renovation, an alteration, something to kind of try to make this faulty system better. And we're now coming to heads with the fact that maybe it can't get better. Maybe you can't fix something from the top. Maybe you can't just tweak a few things and make it better. Slap a little affirmative action on that and make it okay. We really maybe can't do that. We might be at a point in time where we have to actually fully change our way of doing things. Now, many of us love that idea. We've been advocating for an overhaul of the system on all fronts for a very long time because we have seen that it's like, wow, this system sucks and nothing about it really works for anyone. Like some people who have more, it works for enough, but it doesn't really give them everything that they would want or that level of satisfaction with their life, health, schooling, education, all those things that they might want. They might be able to kind of buy their way out of it. And that's what a lot of our Band-Aids have been, is like loopholes for people to kind of buy their way out of something or get their way out of something. But the overall systems that hold us are super faulty. And this has been a reality that we've been living in for a long, long time. So it's steeped in us. We don't know that. And now at this point in time, the North Node, Gemini, the one that's eclipsing the sun, is really showing it to us, because it's like there's not even the pretense of trying to pretend anymore. And now we just have this mass outflood of information that's constantly false, constantly dramatically changed in a way to pull at our heartstrings, to make us do this, to make us do that. It's very obvious. It doesn't take a lot to see that. People pull into their confirmation bias. Yes, I agree with this. Yes, I agree with that. But there really isn't like independent news sources that act as though they're independent news sources. Really aren't independent news sources. More often than not, they have a very strong agenda and opinion themselves on what they actually want to send out into the world. And more often than not, they're using as resource material mainstream media. So that in and of itself makes them not really that much of an independent news source. And then we see mainstream media, which is, obviously bought and sold on advertisement. And so we're just left in this situation where truth is like almost impossible to find. And you really have to do a lot of digging, a lot of soul searching, and even within that, you really can't have confidence around it. And that's the big thing with the North Node. There's no confidence where Rahu is, because it's this magnified, exaggerated confusion and delusion that sees things in all these different ways. And that level of seeing things kind of as they could be or as they may be or suspiciously and all this kind of stuff leads to a lack of security. If you don't trust what you're reading or what you're seeing, or even the video footage before your very own eyes, because we live in an age when you can literally change video footage, if you don't believe that, then how secure can you feel? You really can't feel that secure. You can feel really secure in that K2 down there in Sagittarius. You can feel really secure in those rooted beliefs that you just know are right because your gut tells you so. Your gut is actually, there's a lot to be said on the gut right now. I'm not going to get into like gut health, but a lot of what we believe is like our gut instinct or something like this is actually coming from someone else, somewhere else. And it's been implanted in us by the society we live in. It's not actually your instinct or your gut. It's your fear. It's your primal self coming out, your primal brain, your reptilian brain saying, oh, this is dangerous. Oh, this is okay. This is safe. This is dangerous. And you're getting that feeling because you're being triggered. And what's triggering you is your past. And it might be as simple as your childhood. You might be able to look at it that simply. But if it's challenging for you to pinpoint it on your childhood, you need to look at your childhood as more than just the home you were raised in, the parents you had, the society that you were raised in. You need to understand that your childhood consisted of going to school. More than likely, you went to school. It consisted of the doctors you went to and what they said to you. It consisted of the TV programs that you saw and were exposed to, the movies that you saw, the books that you read, the structure of our society, the way playgrounds are, the way parks are set up, the way police and pedestrian and everybody else has their engagement. We see this from the time we're born, and we take all this information in. So regardless of what your parents might have done or said or taught you, or what maybe you went to some special school, or you did, you didn't have the same societal upbringing as other people, you still did, whether you realize it or not. The constant advertising before your eyes occurred, and it happened. And unless you were living, really remotely with no TV, and never seeing billboards and never seeing magazines or newspapers, and really only engaging with other people who lived in that same small world, then you really did get the societal upbringing. Furthermore, even if you lived in that really far-stretched place where hardly anyone went, it was just this little tight-knit community, that community came about because of the greater society. People chose to live that way because of the greater society and what they were founded on. So you still inherit those beliefs through your grandparents, through your parents, through your ancestry. So even in the protesting that people do, which, the protesting of life, like choosing to live outside of the norm, the fact that that's a choice, and that somebody did that and made that choice to live in a different way, is an indication of the society you live in still. So this stage we're in, this place we're in right now, in time, in history, is so huge because it's when things are coming to a head, like kind of in a way that is new. Because as much as there's been, riots and natural disasters and plagues and all these other things before, there hasn't been this level of these things with this level of technology. And Gemini really rules over our capacity to communicate with technology, with internet. I mean, none of the previous big civil rights movements happened with internet. Smaller ones have. The plagues of the past that we all touch upon, those also did not have the internet. So the fact that we are now communicating, everybody's sort of a journalist, everybody's somebody who can pass information along, is a big part of it, because we are keeping ourselves in the delusion, but we're also bringing ourselves to a state of truth. The fact that we can constantly checks and balance. I mean, even all these videos of police shootings never would have been recorded if it wasn't for everyone having a camera on their phone. We all have this new chance to document things, and really you could just document it. You don't have to say anything. You can just show what you see and share that, and that's powerful. It's actually more powerful than putting your opinion on it and putting your slant on it, which is what most media does, which most journalists do, and people who are actually sharing information for a living are going to put their slant on it more often than not. Even when they sort of say they don't, they really do, and you can see it. And that's what's so phenomenal about it, is we're at a point in time now where people lie and make things up, and huge organizations lie and make things up, and it's so obvious. But yet, to those whose confirmation bias that meets, they're not seeing that it's not true. For them, it's like, oh no, that meets my worldview. Like, that fits what I believe, and so I'm gonna believe it, and I'm gonna pass it. I'm gonna share it. I'm going to get other people behind it, and then that's gonna trigger that person who also has the same confirmation bias as me, and we're just gonna have a whole sea of people who believe this one thing. And it's fascinating, actually, if we look at it from this perspective. If we can step outside of it and see it, it can almost be hilarious. If you were a fly on the wall, or you were writing a story about this time in history, it would be almost comical, except for we're living it. And so, of course, it's very serious, because it's our lives, and it's our well-being, and it's the well-being of our neighbors and our friends and our families. And so it's not funny. It's actually very, 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 very disturbing that we are at a point in time when truth is so fragile and so fleeting, and so many things cover it, that we are even trying to zealously uncover it, we still run into constant jams in that department. And we all think we know better than the other person who doesn't believe the same thing as us. Again, we have to go to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is our beliefs. It is literally what we believe and why we believe it. And we have to look at that. We have to look at actual history in order to see what we believe and why we believe it. We don't really understand it until we put it into context. And once we start to see that, it's like, oh, wow, yeah, that has always been kind of a belief that I maybe never even called to the surface, maybe never even realized I had. But it was just steeped into the way I saw the world. And we understand this about children, about newborns and children up to the age of 3. We understand that they take in information and store it, and it becomes a part of their personality, and it becomes a part of their wounds and their fears and their triggers and all these different things. They just can't name it because they don't have words for it. They don't have a way to qualify it yet. Well, we're all like those infants. We're a bunch of people who have no way of even understanding or qualifying a lot of what we've inherited in our world, because we maybe never even saw it ourselves. We maybe didn't even live at a time when there was any example of that. But everything that we are living was structured on that. So it doesn't matter because we're still living inside that structure. And at this point, with the sun, our power, our authority, our strength, our capacity to lead, and our capacity to connect to consciousness, like literally our capacity to connect to God, is what's being eclipsed here in the total eclipse. And it is the North Node, that magnified, delusional, seeing everything kind of in this foreign, untrustworthy way, like, I don't think you're telling the truth. And what do we always say about people who don't trust other people? They're usually the ones who are not telling the truth, right? If you're an untrustworthy person, then you tend not to trust other people because you assume other people are doing what you're doing. Well, right now we're in a place where kind of everybody's like that. You know, it's one big Rahu fest, and it's going to be on our power. And it's joined Mercury, who just went retrograde today, who's going retrograde today, literally, as I film this. Who knows if I'll even get this video up, because I am doing this at this time. But that retrograde ruler is going to create even more confusion, right? Because the ruler of this eclipse is delayed, backed up, stopped. Maybe the cameras don't roll. Maybe the information doesn't get through. Maybe there's a technical breakdown. All the different things that can go wrong with technology and communication during Mercury retrograde are going to be confounded here. And we're going to see that will create even a higher level of confusion and delusion. But it also could help unveil truths, because when there's technological breakdown, that's when we see the cameras are still rolling when they're not supposed to be, or whatever was designed to be the illusion. And each of us do it in our own way. You know, we structure our story, we structure our image of ourselves and our own narrative that we want to tell. That the things that will fail will be out of our control. It won't be part of some masterful plan we're trying to do. It'll all be out of our control. And so there will be breakdowns, emails that don't go through, things again, and the email that doesn't go through will trigger the anger from the person who's coming from their anger down in K2, you know, down in Sagittarius, and they'll spark back at someone else, and that will start a fight, and this will go like this, and and all these things will be exposed as a result of the retrograde delay that we might not have seen. So expect some information blacking out. Expect some stuff that just kind of, doesn't make it the way it's supposed to in terms of communication, in terms of information. And that can even be another level of exposure here, because that's really the point we're at. We've been in this nodal axis since January of last year. So we're at a time when we're ready to expose the lies. Like, the delusion's been going on for a long time, and it's just reached its high pitch. And whenever we hit a point of something where it's like, this is the most, I can't handle it anymore, that's when it's ready to almost break. That's when we've almost gotten there. And this nodal axis is going to switch in September, so we just need to hold on a little bit longer, and not even hold on, but really face truth. And the only way to face truth on a global scale, the only way to really have that discernment where we can tell fact from fiction, or where we as a collective society can tell fact from fiction, because if anybody is paying attention right now, that's the biggest issue we have too, is that we're, even if you do have a little bit of discernment on something, or you can see through, most other people are not. So it's becoming harder to even speak or say a perspective or have a point of view. And even maybe somebody might agree with you, but then what they use to back up the agreement is kind of out there, and you're like, okay, that doesn't really help me, because it's not, the information, the defense of what I'm saying is not aligned at all. This is the problem. We actually all do better when everybody's more intelligent. The idea that keeping some people down and raising other people up gives these people more is actually a delusion, and it's a really strong delusion that's been created by the powers that be. People who hold a lot of power want you to believe that, and they want other people to believe that, so there can be a lot of battling happening over here over ideology. But the fact of the matter is we're ignoring big truths that are happening, big things that are happening. And we're arguing over essentially semantics, because if we were to lift the veil, if we were to allow ourselves to see beyond the power that has been created, this power structure that's been created, we would realize that the more all the little minion people, or peons, I guess is actually more of what I would call us. Minions are more like helpers to the bad people, I guess. We're the peons, really. All of us, we're peons. Even if you think you're not a peon, you're probably a peon. If you're not a peon, you're not watching this, and your power is great. So awesome, good for you. Give us a little. The peon people, being all the rest of us, need to recognize that the more of us that become intelligent, that become wise, that become educated, that become knowing, the better. We don't want to hoard whatever little thing we can get for ourselves, so that we can still have some semblance of freedom, or some semblance of happiness, or some semblance of comfort, and allow other people to just straggle around and drown, because that's actually not going to help us in the long run. You might get 5 more minutes of comfort, but eventually they're coming for your comfort too. So we need to have this bond with one another where we all work together. And the only way to do that is if we agree, right? So it's very, very, very masterful to have us all disagree. It's very masterful to have us all arguing over these little things, when in truth, we probably mostly agree on fundamental issues. The truth is, most people really do. What is happening is that information, news, media, these kind of things are telling you that other people don't agree with you. They're telling you those people are doing this, those people are like this is like this. They're reporting on it as if it's fact. And they're also creating that divide, just the different types of media there are, and the different organizations that control these different things. They want to pull at everybody's puppet strings and have people feel these deep divides, even though, again, at the core, most people all want the same thing. We want to be happy, we want to be comfortable, we want to be free. It's really all most people want. And we are okay with someone else having that, as long as we don't lose it. So what do you do then? Well, you say, because most people wouldn't naturally think everyone shouldn't have those things. Those are the basic human rights we should have, just coming into earth in a body. But then they're like, oh, but those people want to take yours away. Those people over there want to take your rights away. That's how they convince you. They convince you to dislike other people by telling you that those people want to take that away from you. Well, the truth is they're taking that away from all of us. So the more we can kind of encircle one another and raise each other up, the more powerful we are in taking back our rights, taking back our freedom, taking back our sanity and our intelligence and our capacity to really make decisions for our collective that come from true information. And true information will change. I mean, facts and data do change. There's not a true truth when it comes to things like facts and data. Real truths are eternal and they're timeless and they last forever. Facts and data have to change because time changes and information changes and what we know changes and evolves. But if we're not in the highest integrity in each level of that, if we don't believe the most that we believe, and not me and you, but all the information people, meaning the scientists who are doing the study, the researcher who began the study to begin with, meaning the person reporting on the study, meaning the government officials, all the different parties have to be in integrity. If even one is not, then the whole ship goes down. Then the integrity is lost. And it doesn't matter if you truly believe what you believe, because it's founded on something false. And that, I think, is the part that we're all really going to have to dive into. And I think in 2 weeks, on July 5th, when we have our second lunar eclipse, I think we'll really get there a lot better, because Jupiter will be back in his own sign in Sagittarius, and we'll have more of an opportunity to explore the belief part of things. I think this last full moon eclipse had too much Scorpio energy. It was too emotional, and the node was, coming from Sagittarius, but the ruler was also still, Jupiter was still in Saturn. Jupiter is still in Saturn at this moment as well, and that, in Capricorn, joined Saturn in Capricorn, really keeping the capacity to expand into wise teachings at a limitation. So I think that once we have Jupiter back in his own sign, we'll have a better chance at tapping into that. And because it will be retrograde, we will be able to internalize the wisdom instead of just trying to spout it out to everyone, which Sagittarius often does. Instead of trying to immediately turn it into something that we can pass out to the world and preach, it can be something that we actually really fine tune in ourselves and see in ourselves. So that, I hope, is really a huge turning point for us in terms of turning inward. And I know a lot of people are doing a lot of good work already in that department, really trying to look at themselves, their biases, their habits, their patterns. We really need to do that if we're going to get out of this alive. So the other thing I want to talk about with this big eclipse thing happening, and I actually want to say, I just said Jupiter will be back in Sagittarius on the 29th, and Venus will be moving forward again on the 25th. So Mercury did just begin retrograde, but it's only a little bit of time before we have, like a week before some of the other planets start to go forward. So right now it's a week where everything's retrograde except for Mars, and we're really in the intensity building up to the eclipse, and the max point of sort of delusion and confusion, and our power being eclipsed is really hard to experience. When the sun is eclipsed, it can feel really draining and really our energy source is being eclipsed. So we really have to take care of ourselves, get rest. It's going down to the new moon as well, so we're already tired. Maybe be around water if you can, cool off a little bit. It's been a little bit cooler here the past couple days, but just making sure that you're taking care of yourself is really important. For each of us, the sun rules something different in our chart, so it's going to be a different area of our life that's really getting hit between Gemini, what house Gemini is for us, and what the sun rules. But for all of us, whatever the sun rules, it is where we get our power. It's where we really feel our power. And we just have to be aware of all of this that's happening at this time. The other thing is that Mars is now moving too. Mars has moved into Pisces. And this is going to settle down on some of the anger around our social justice that we've been really seeing, the high level of, began with violence and just really intense sort of militance that Mars brings to the table. Mars really brings up like the police and the army and stuff like that. it brings up that part that just does what it's supposed to do and follows orders and is disciplined, and not just with the police, right? We see that with protesters, we see that with people of all sorts really getting militant, right? Being like, this is, you know, step, march, 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 all of that, chanting the same thing again and again. That's all very Mars and K2. I mean, excuse me, Mars and K2 together bring a lot of militants, but that's not what this is. That's all very Mars energy, and Mars in Aquarius, because it's working for social reform, right? Working for social justice. Mars in Pisces is a little bit different. We're going to find ourselves losing a little energy to march in line and to do the, you know, to do that work intellectually and ideologically and all of that stuff, that real energized part of this movement is changing. And what we see with Pisces is that it can get a little lost. Things can get a little bit lost in escapism, emotionalism, spiritualism. All these are ways that we escape and we kind of float out of the way. So people, for the most part, are going to start to move their sense of action more into those kind of realms, which could literally be, for some people, starting to get into, you know, doing habits and addictive things that they've done before, because Mars in the 12th house, if it was somebody's 12th house, definitely brings that up. And Pisces is the natural 12th house. So we see that people might like start kind of getting lost in old habits or ways of escaping. If you're, you know, if you have a very strong practice, maybe you dive really deep into your spiritual practice. Maybe you have like this way that you've been seeing things from a higher bird's eye view up above, but you've been just doing, you know, the marching foot soldier thing, and now you're kind of going to tap more into that creative or emotional or bigger picture side of things. Mars is where we act, and Pisces is where we escape. So you can see there's a range of how we escape. I mean, there's healthier ways to escape than others, but it's not a place where we get a lot done, and it's not a place where we're really, you know, physically manifesting at the same level. The fact that this all happened the way it did, Mars in Aquarius, is all about social justice, but it's also an air sign, right? So the fact that we have social media, again, really helped make something happen as of that. It's like we're doing action in the realm of social justice, and we can use our intellect, we can use our ideas, we can write essays, we can send things online, we can read books, we can do all this stuff that uses our intellect in order to get that out. So I think that we're going to see an evolution, a switch. And for some people, it might feel like, wow, we're losing it. You know, we're not keeping the momentum of change. We're falling off, you know, and I can see especially people who've been really strong or in leadership positions or who've been waiting for this moment for a long time, it might really feel like that to them. But what I would say is that that's not really true. It's not that it's going away. It's just that the energy has shifted, and people need to do the personal work. There needs to be personal work done. It can't just be marching in the streets. It can't just be demanding things of, you know, government officials and police and stuff like that. That is very effective, and it will get us somewhere. But it can't be everything, because each individual person needs to understand for themselves the part that they play in the bigger structure of things. And, you know, at this point in time, we can make some serious change through our actions that are, you know, more like written actions or whatever. The different things we do, the artistic output, you know, the books we write, the books we read, the things we say, that we have a lot of opportunity to shift and make change in other realms besides just the realm of, you know, physically protesting or walking in the streets with signs. And I think that's really where this is going to take its movement for some time. And of course, Mars, you know, does stay a little bit longer than the Sun and Venus and Mercury in a sign, but it'll eventually go into Aries, and we'll see a lot more of a sort of militance arise again, and maybe some anger. So it's kind of like a respite with Mars and Pisces, and a respite where we can really dive deep into the parts of ourselves that need that. The spiritual bypassing that we see happening right now at this time is a result of a lack of work being done in this realm. And even people who are not spiritually bypassing, who are following marching orders, are still maybe not spending enough time going in that area because they really can't. I mean, there's only so many things you can do at one time. So if you're actively fighting something in the outside world, you're not as likely to be doing the inner work. So I think that's really what we need to be focusing on. Whether or not I think it's what we need to be focusing on, it's what the alignments are offering us at this time. A chance to really, in this eclipse, really have power eclipsed, really see the government, and don't, we'll see the government eclipse, and we'll also see some shady stuff trying to happen, right? Like I said, there's no question that shady things won't by government or by big, powerful people won't try to happen. It's just that Mercury retrograde combined in this situation and the eclipse might make it not work the way that everyone plans, and we'll be able to see more than maybe we were supposed to. So that unveiling and recognizing of things that happens fuels us in our beliefs. But if it's just continuing to fuel us where we're focusing on what everyone else should do, the police are bad, these people are bad, this is wrong, that's only going to get us so far if we're not willing to do the inner work. And the inner work has to be within each person. It really does. There's only so much you can do to uproot a society without uprooting the individuals. Each person has to do it, or else everyone will really technically be holding on to the past and wanting things not to change. Even people who have suffered at the hands of society, even those who've been held down, often get a form of Stockholm syndrome and hold on to what they know, because it's the devil you know rather than the devil that you don't. It's what you don't know the unknown, so it feels more comfortable to cling to what you do know. So anyway, this is getting pretty long, so I'm gonna let it go. But I see if there's anything I really feel the need to bring to us. Saturn on Mars. That was the one last thing I want to say, and it kind of has to do with what I was already talking about. Saturn retrogrades, giving drishti to Mars in Pisces, and they're in close degrees right now. So this is, Saturn's that sort of cold, dispassionate self. And when they were together, Saturn and Mars in Capricorn, earlier this year, we saw them sort of working team to team because Mars was exalted and Saturn was in his own sign. So it was kind of like, okay, the hard worker is here and Saturn's gonna just let him do his thing. But Saturn's in general and Mars are very unfriendly. And the reason is because Saturn has a tendency to withdraw and to go into fear, and Mars has more of a tendency to act and go into anger. Well, with Mars sort of diffused in Pisces and the watery sign of Pisces sort of, escaping and not being as present, the really strong benefit we can get here is to do more meditation. To have Saturn's drishti to Mars be one that brings about a desire to be alone and to really dive into silence and the part of us that can handle being alone and that can handle really loss of everything. Saturn brings us to terms with that, with loss of everything. And it's an internalized energy right now with Saturn, and it's still in his own sign. So there's a lot of intelligence there. Offering that drishti 3 houses away to Mars is giving that part of us that's disciplined and active that wants to escape, maybe an out from the escape of TV or drinking or whatever it is that you escape with, and an opportunity to escape into something like silence and meditation and solitude, and yes, the cold, harsh reality of the world and things like that we might not want to face. So I think that's a powerful thing to tap into right now. And Jupiter is giving drishti to Venus also, but I feel like Jupiter's moving into Sagittarius, so it's going to be just a short one. it's not as relevant. But Mars is giving drishti to this whole eclipse as well. Mars is at 1 degree, and the eclipse sun to moon are at 6 degrees, and the nodes at 4. Mercury's much farther into the sign at 20 degrees. So Mercury's relevance in this eclipse is more than anything as the ruler of the house. But Mars giving that drishti to all 4 of the, well, especially the 3, especially the moon and sun and the nodal that's actually eclipsing, does bring a spark of anger, even though it's in Pisces. So it's not as riled up angry. It does bring a spark of anger and a spark of action. And Mars is kind of like the general of the army, right? And the sun is like the king. So we can also see how there's some energy of that being reflected onto our power and our government, our authority, our president, who's going to be having a rally on the 20th, right before the eclipse. He obviously did not consult with his astrologers, in his 11th house. So this is this kind of big thing he's doing that is going to eclipse his power. And you can see with that Mars drishti on it, that anger, the potential for there to be some serious unrest as a result of that is high. And not just with the president, but, in each of our own personal spheres as well. And like I said, it's a different house for each of us. So it's going to be a different game for each of us. But as a collective reality, we all share, at least in the United States, but even in other countries, people do have their eyes on America and their eyes on this president. So that's just something to take note of. And with that, I am going to sign off and wish you careful and relaxing next few days where you take care of yourself and, really are able to make space so that you can receive the very, very valuable downloads we can get during these eclipses, as opposed to just kind of trying to make your way through the normal in life and finding it really confusing and challenging. So wishing you well. And as always, if you can like or comment or share these videos, it helps me out so much. If you're not already a subscriber, please go to www.radhahomeyoga.com, RADHA home, HOME yoga.com, and you can receive these forecasts in your inbox. I do free reports all the time on different transits that we have going on, and it's an opportunity for you to stay connected and stay in tune with the stars. And also, if you have any desire right now to get a reading for yourself, to know how these alignments are going to affect you, what houses these eclipses are happening in for you, what your nodal axis is, all these different transits that are so powerful right now, please reach out on the contact form on my website and let me know, and we can set something up. And namaste.